In this video, I'm going to show you how to glue wood together. Welcome to more David's DIY. On this channel, we're all about kind of DIY around the house, everyday DIY problem solved. Today, we're going to be talking about how to glue wood together. So if you're a DIYer yourself, consider subscribing for a lot more great content. And remember, any instructions will be in the description below. Now let's get into it. So the first and probably most important thing about gluing boards edge to edge is to have the edge of the board perfectly flat and square. And you're going to want to make sure that the edges are 90 degrees to the face. And for shorter boards like this, you could probably get away with a table saw or just buying flat stock. But for longer boards, you're probably going to want to use a jointer or maybe set up a jointing system on your table saw. But for small kind of DIY like this, you can probably just run them through a rip saw or, like I said, buy straight flat stock, and it's going to be good enough. Another thing to think about is composing your board. That is, matching the grain up. If you're going to be staining the wood, you're going to want to match the grain in such a way that when you stain it up, it looks like kind of one continuous grain. I'm going to be painting this, so I'm not too worried about it. So, that's kind of something that depends on the project that you're building. Another thing to think about if you're doing multiple boards or wider boards is sometimes the end grain is going to have a circular pattern in it, kind of like this one. And if you have boards like that, you're going to want to alternate them, up and down the way that the circle rotates across your board. With this little narrow boards like this, it probably isn't going to make too much of a difference though. So the next thing you're going to want to do, which is also probably more important if you're doing multiple boards in a wider piece, is just to dry clamp your boards in place. So you would just put all your boards together and you would actually just clamp them in place, kind of dry clamp them, and check to make sure that all of them are kind of flat this way. They're not cupped, they're not curved, and to make sure that the piece is going to end up nice and flat when you're done. And then while you've got your boards dry clamped, another good idea, especially if you're doing multiple boards and wider boards, is if you have them dry clamped where you want them, you can mark it. And one way to do that, you can do a V across all of your boards. You would just draw a V like this, and then as you lay them out again with glue, you're going to see that V and line them up. Another way to do it is you can number them. You can put 1 and then 2 and then 3 down your boards, and then when you re-clamp them with glue, you're going to have them in the same order, if you happen to be composing grain and so on like that. So now we're going to go ahead and glue up the boards. You're going to want to put a nice bead of glue on both boards. You're going to want to make sure that the board is completely covered so that when you clamp them together, you have a bit of squeeze out. And you can spread the glue with a brush or a roller, but really with a small little build like this, you can just go ahead and use your finger. You can spread it across. You're going to want to make sure you get even coverage across the whole board when you do this. So we'll go ahead and do that with both boards, and then we'll go ahead and we'll show you how to glue them up so that they'll be nice and straight and nice and flat. Just like that. So you're going to want a nice flat surface to glue these up on, and what you want to do is just lay them down and just work them together just a little bit, kind of back and forth like this with your hands, and that's going to kind of work them really tight together. Then you're going to want to get them just lined up using your lines if you use them. If not, just like I'm going to cut these after I've got it glued together, so I'm not too worried about the ends. And they're going to want to go ahead and carefully clamp them up. Just do a light clamp on one end, just a light clamp on the other end. And you can use, if you're doing longer boards or like really wide boards or a big build, you'd want to get some nice long bar clamps. But for a little kind of DIY like this, you don't really need that. And as you can see, the glue is starting to squeeze out. That's a good thing. That means that you've got good coverage and that the glue is on the entire surface of both sides. So we'll just clamp that up like that, make sure it's nice and flat. And we'll leave that for about 15 minutes. And then by that time, the glue will kind of start to gum up. And we can just scrape that off with a razor blade or like a putty knife or a chisel or whatever you might have. And if you prefer to get the glue off ahead of time, you can also wipe the glue off with a wet rag. That'll work as well. So I've got my glue wiped off and scraped off. It's been about 2 hours. After 1 to 2 hours with a good wood glue, you can definitely remove your clamps and move on with your project. But it's going to take a full 24 hours for it to totally set. So we'll take the clamps off here and we'll see how we did. I mean, we basically took two really short, narrow boards, and now we've got a nice wide plank for the project that I'm going to be working on. You know, it's really easy, it's really simple. A lot of people are kind of scared to get into gluing up boards like this, but it's really not a big deal. And if you're just starting out, you don't have to work on a whole wide board. Do a couple, like three sets of two, and then glue them together. You know, whatever your skill level is at. It's not a big deal. It's really easy, it's really quick, and it really kind of raises the horizons of what you can do with, you know, woodworking and DIY. So remember, in the description below, all the instructions, as well in the description below, is links to all the tools and equipment used in this video. I'll see you in the next one.